Hi, everyone. Robert Ouimet is also on here, I believe, if he wants to show himself. But Robert and I have been working with Joyce and Brenda at the Alliance and Taylor to be offering digital ladders. We're kind of into our second year of this program. The whole point of digital ladders is to help the arts and culture sector start to feel they have an entryway to learn and use digital tools, not only for the marketing and promotion of their work, but also to support the organizing internally of their work and in the creative expression of their work. And we've done so with multiple parts of the Digital Ladders program. And this is the first of our 6 Ask Me Anythings. So we have got Annelise Larson with us today, who I have known for God, now half my life at least. And Annelise, I've watched her get involved in digital marketing right when the internet sort of started, and her brain started to evolve the way like Google and search engines started to evolve, and it's a wonderful and scary thing. And so Annelise has done a lot of teaching and mentoring around how to help use this sort of cyberverse to support cultural organizations in promoting their work and finding their audience. So today's Ask Me Anything, the way we've designed it, is Annelise will probably present for about 5 to 10 minutes. And then what we'll do is go into the Ask Me Anything, the question part. So I'm going to try and manage that by getting a speakers list. So in the chat, if you want to just, you can either write your question or you can just say, just write in question or a question mark, and I will get your name and add it to a speakers list. We can also unmute. We're not too many of us to be a little more chaotic if we desire to get that way, but let's start with a little organization and see how it feels. Okay, so if you have a question, you can type it into the chat or just put a question mark in and I know to call on you, right? Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Annelise, and I'm going to kind of put 10 minutes on the clock just to watch and check in when we're at that point. If we go a little bit over, that's fine. And if you have questions as Annelise is presenting, we can jump in.
Yeah,
Over to
that's
you,
what we're
Anne.
here for. Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm always excited to show up for Sue and for Digital Ladders. I am based in Saskatoon, which is ceded territory. I don't think it makes it any better, of, for Treaty 6, which incorporates a whole bunch of Indigenous peoples. The Cree, the Dene, the Saulteaux, Nakota, Ojibwe, just to name a few. Lots of good Plains people that have nurtured this land, and grateful to be speaking to you today from this place. Lots of sunshine, very cold today, very cold. It was warmer this morning. It was minus 33 when I woke up this morning with wind chill. It's been quite chilly the last few days. But let's just jump right into it. So I'm here to, as Sue said, I've done a lot of work as search engines have evolved over time. So that's kind of the focus of what you can ask me about today. So I'm just going to give you a little brief overview of my kind of perspective on the concept of discoverability, touch on very lightly on sort of best practices, which then whatever interests you, you can ask me questions about. Um, so hopefully everyone can see this. I'm gonna shrink everyone's faces so I can see what I'm talking about. Um, yeah, so when it comes to discoverability for me, I just like to sort of touch on what that is, because I think there's a number of different interpretations of what this word means. It sort of comes from an information sciences background, but really when I'm talking about discoverability, I'm talking about the concept of getting found. And for me, getting found is just really a part of the equation. What is interesting to me about the digital space is how it allows creative people, organizations to connect with an audience. There are just all these amazing tools to do that. So it really is just about connecting humans, ultimately, which then flows into the fact that it's about beginnings. It's about beginning relationships with those other humans who will hopefully support the great work that you're doing over the years, and hopefully it's just sort of the beginning of your journey together. I also like to think of discoverability kind of on a sliding scale, because there's many different ways that we can learn about new things online that sort of fit into a whole bunch of different contexts. We're only really going to focus on one today, but I think this context can be really important in terms of the ways that we learn about new things range from, welcome kind of moments of discovery all the right through to very unwelcome. Usually that comes from, sort of irrelevant ads or other kinds of, unwelcome interruptions in whatever we're trying to experience online. There could be relevant interruptions because, of course, the other thing is all of these platforms that we're on, as you probably know a lot about us. And so when we have opened ourselves up to cookies and all those kinds of things, at least the interruptions that you're getting, for better or for worse, are more relevant because, they know or assume certain things about us. There's also things that can be even more personalized, right? That are very much sometimes that you've opted into. You've probably seen things like that. People have bought this, also bought these, or when you're looking at movies, other suggestions. Again, it's just another way to kind of tame this age of abundance that we're living in terms of what we can get access to online. Then we sort of slide into human beings because they also are ways that we discover things online. It could be just people that we trust, right? So things like where you're getting reviews, or perhaps what we call an influencer whose opinion you really trust. So they're always introducing obviously new things to the audiences that they have that you may be a part of. And we have tons of tools like social media that allow us to connect to people that we actually know. So to have that personal connection, and for someone to say, oh, I just read this book, it's really fantastic, you should really check it out. I mean, that's often been a way that I have been introduced to new things. And I think especially in the early days of the pandemic, everyone was generating lists of movies and games and books and things that they wanted to share with other people to fill this time that we suddenly had in front of screens. But there's also, of course, this a lot of the things that we do online have to do with actively looking for something, right? Like, and that's really where the search engines come in, because we're looking for something usually very specific. And I find this moment of active looking, of active seeking, incredibly powerful. And there are all kinds of tools like that out there that allow us to find things. And that's sort of the focus of what I want to talk to about today. So search engines come in all kinds of different forms. You might think about Google, of course, probably instantly jump to mind, maybe Bing if you've branched further afield. DuckDuckGo is a privacy-based search engine. But really anything where that we have opportunities to ask for something and receive an answer into what we were looking. And that really breaks down to very relevant moments of discovery, and really includes everywhere that's a search bar, whether it's a social media platform or YouTube or an e-commerce marketplace like Amazon or Etsy, like anywhere that there is an actual invitation to search. And of course, we also have even smarter, AI powered smart assistants now, Siri and Alexa and Google Home. So we're also speaking our queries. We're not just typing them anymore. So there's lots of ways that we are invited to search. And what's really interesting about connecting with people in this moment of active interest is that kind of demographics get thrown out the window. This is something that, this opportunity is available basically 24 hours a day, 7 days of the week, and pretty much around the world, except where, censorship issues start to come into play. But it is, we don't think about demographics with search. We think about like, what are people looking for? What are they interested in? What are they confused by and they want more information about? So it's a very interesting moment to connect with other people through. Really brief overview of how search engines work in a general kind of way. Basically, they send out these little programs, they crawl links, index content, throw them into a database with a bunch of other data sources. The searcher speaks or types their question or query into whatever the search engine of their choice is. And then the search engine uses the information in its database and applies sort of two set of factors. One is their ranking factors, which are often proprietary and the reason, the basis of their business model. And then also these personalization factors, which should become more and more of a player over the years. The more they know, not just about you, but people like you, the people that you're connected to, all of these things in the hope that when they return a search result, it is as relevant to you as possible. Like I've tried to get out of, just always using Google, and I've used DuckDuckGo, which again, they strip all those personalization factors out. Just find the search results aren't as good. So I've gone back to the evil of Google. And but I don't have time to waste. So it's a good tool that does that in terms of helping me find things. So there's kind of 5 little categories of best practices when it comes to being search engine friendly. You may have heard the expression search engine optimization, or SEO. So these are all things, whatever interests you, that you can ask me some questions about. One is, we use language when we search. And so there are ways that we can do what is called keyword research using the ad platforms on Google and Bing to understand how people are searching. What is the language they are using for searching for relevant things? And we can use this language in all kinds of different ways, but it allows us to think about answering those queries, whether it's how we're using that language throughout our footprint, or maybe creating new content because there's a relevant pocket of interest that we haven't been able to tap into. So keyword research is one of them. And, you can place them in certain places on the page and all that kind of stuff, but really just using that language in a human friendly way is the best way that you can make the most out of it. Also, the other pages, because we do live in a web online, all of those connections to your content, even if it's just within your own footprint or from external sites that have authority like Wikipedia or IMDb, if it's a movie, all of those things lend weight as part of those ranking factors in terms of telling the search engine, this is a good result because this authority site is linking to it. So it's obviously worthwhile. I mentioned search engine optimization, sort of the evolution in it. There's 2 kind of subgroups of SEO that are becoming more and more important. Something called semantic SEO, which is basically means it's all about who is searching. So it's about the way that we can give the best possible result to a searcher. So that goes beyond things like the topic. It also has to do what is the user experience. So things like pages loading fast and not having a lot of errors in them, all of those things can actually help you perform better in search. And that's a really important perspective. And it's how the main search engines, that's what they built their successful business models on. Also, for a lot of you, you may, and again, when we are all allowed to go back out into the real world, full time, local search engine optimization, where my favorite search is, best coffee near me, or maybe art gallery near me, or, performances in Vancouver today, all of these things that are very specific and grounded in a time and place. And so there are a number of things that you can do to, clues that you could give the search engines to make sure that they really understand that where you are, if that's really important to your business model. And I find in the arts it often is, especially when you get into performance and, brick and mortar stores. And then finally, sort of been the rage in the space, mostly because the arts and culture sector is so behind, is something called structured metadata, which is this extra little bit of code that you can put around your content that lets Google know that this is an event or this is a physical place. And schema.org is the big sort of industry standard in terms of the search engines, and there's plugins and stuff you can get for WordPress to help simplify it, but it is becoming super important and allows that data to be used by all these other different databases, not just Google. In fact, in Canada, there is a database being created that is just for the arts and culture sector called artsdata.ca. So if you have structured data, they can scrape that and include it in this big database. They kind of want to be the IMDb for art and culture in Canada. So those are the sort of the big 5 sort of buckets of best practices, a very, 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 very quick overview. And I now invite you to ask me anything.
Awesome. And I just got the leaf blower going outside my window, so I'm going to apologize for that, and I'll mute as soon as I can. But we have some, just first of all, some tactical questions first.
Okay.
First of all, I want to know, Joyce, will this recording be available? And Annelise, will your slides be available?
Absolutely. I can have my slides.
Yep, and the recording will too. So we'll post that up on YouTube after it's done.
Hot damn, good, great. Okay, then there was also a question from M of what is the best web hosting site? And I do want to say on February 24th, we have a different expert speaking who's really going to drill into websites and hosting. But Annelise, do you have an answer to that question right now, or do you want to pass it off to the 24th?
Well, I think probably someone with, way more expertise in that regard. I think, if you're targeting a certain country, it helps to have your website hosted in that country. And I would say, in terms of like, if you're using a WordPress site, it helps to have a host that specializes in WordPress and things like that. But other than that, it's above my knowledge base in terms of hosting.
May I just ask, what is WordPress?
WordPress is a sort of open source content management system, or CMS. So you don't have to know how to program. You can basically I'm not a programmer. I have built websites with WordPress. You get a theme and you sort of plug all your content into it, and ta-da, you have a website. So
there's WordPress and Squarespace, Wix, a whole bunch of them are basically half-baked sites that you get to fill in and finish the design and put your content into. So I believe, Annelise, what you're saying is if you are building on one of those pre-made platforms, you want to work with a hosting company that is an expert in that type of
Yeah, especially WordPress, like Squarespace and Wix, they are sort of self-hosted, like those platforms host their websites. But when you're something like WordPress, you can host it anywhere. So
fantastic. And we hope you come to the 24th session where
there you go.
Even further into that question, we go deeper.
Yes.
Terry is requesting that you talk more about some local SEO. Let's go there for a few minutes. Thanks.
Okay. Well, the first thing I say about local SEO actually has nothing to necessarily do with your website. If you haven't got a listing that you've claimed ownership of on Google My Business, you should. Basically, Google will, like, when you do those searches, often you'll get as part of the search results on desktop, not on mobile, you'll get on the right-hand side, you'll get a map, you'll see where people are, like businesses are. And most of that information is pulled from a Google My Business listing. And you just want to fill it out and make it as complete as possible. You can include pictures, you can include, information about your business, as well as even list events there. So it's another way to sort of get into that heart of Google, into that search database. And then on your own website, a big one is like, just make sure you have the address, the address on your website, like, and make sure that that's really clear, that's that you're grounded in this physical place. That's really important. Those are very, very light touch information about local SEO.
So one of the things that I, with Annelise over the years, because I don't know all the big words, is I talk about Google juice. That what you want to do is be having your glass as full of Google juice as possible for Google to be returning your thing relevantly to other people. So for example, your address, or filling out the My Business form, or having really good that your website loads quickly. All these different things add to your Google Juice cup that make you more findable on Google. So that's my really immature way of trying to explain some of these ideas. So
Works. It works.
excellent. Okay, so now, Mandy, do you want to unmute and ask a question? Mandy, do I have to ask?
I'll start my video.
Awesome, sweet. Now we get to see you too.
Maybe.
Hit it.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. So you made mention, Annelise, about brick and mortar and physical time and place, but with this whole safety first and lockdowns and everything else,
Yes.
it's been a giant shift to finding your people organically or paying, like on Facebook with events and things like that. But also the time. I find, because of course Canada is this massive landscape and you want people to tune into your event or workshop, but I'm finding that the timing is always one of the biggest challenges of educating people what time zone.
Well, tell me about it. I'm based in Saskatchewan and we don't do daylight savings time. And so every time I have to do, okay, so am I 2 hours different than Vancouver or 2 hours different than Toronto? Or so, yeah.
Do you know of anything that's like working towards kind of
well, the virtual events are really interesting. And actually it leads into a bit of the structured data piece. Because on schema.org, they didn't used to have the code for virtual events, and now you do. So you can actually tag your event as virtual, and that really helps because, again, then it's also not grounded in a physical place, right? So what's near me could be, France. The physical space matters a lot less, that physical address. So they have been working on trying to, make sure that they have created these extra sort of tags for virtual events. So that's really helpful. I think, if you, again, like I said, you can add events to a Google My Business listing. So I would do that because that is the close. Yeah, you can actually add events. I mean, it's manual work. It's nice when it can be all automatic, but it'd definitely be worth a try. And I mean, obviously beyond like those search engines, you could create a Facebook event on Facebook. You can do all of those things. I ran a virtual event in October, and we happened to have a very Facebook for that particular, it was a television show about ghost hunting. And so our fan base is very Facebook centric. So we did a lot of stuff. We leveraged the hell out of Facebook, whatever it would allow us to do. We created an event. We did the push ads. We also embedded on our website, like the ability to have comments and because we were doing something live. And so we actually did it all based out of the Facebook ecosystem, just because we knew that's where most of our
everybody
fans
was hanging out.
So I think, like you have to take a look at who you're targeting. I'm always about being audience led. So the more you can know about your audience, like try to meet them where they are. And this probably even goes like, so search engines make sense. Like just make sure you're using the right kind of language around your event. And if you can have it as searchable as possible, but also from who you're targeting, know where they are, like where do they spend their time and attention online, and be there. Is it a Facebook group? Is it a Reddit thread? Is it, like really finding where those conversations and communities are gathering already, and take the time to do it, whether it's around your own footprint, but it also might be, if you're trying to draw in new people, it may be somewhere else.
All right, I've got a bunch of questions. Mandy, are you good?
Thank you so much.
Sweet. Awesome question. Okay, so I'm going to try and roll some things in because we're getting some good questions here. Okay. I'm going to moosh two and you see if they can go together.
Okay, I'll try.
I love this, just cracks me up. Imagine you're an arts manager with very little in-house resources.
Typical.
What are some of the low-hanging fruit things you can do without a lot of technical expertise to improve discoverability, which I think you're saying is partly Google My Business.
Yes, huge.
And then I have somebody else asking about a little more information on the artsdata.ca. I don't know if those two go together.
They don't really, but that's
Oh,
okay.
sorry.
I can do it. I can do it.
Go for it.
I can do it. Yeah. So as Google said, I mean, a really low hanging fruit is the Google My Business piece. It's a way just to get very specific business information. Obviously, if your business is grounded in a specific location, like they do this thing where they send you a postcard. So you have to verify your address. So it needs to be tied to a specific address. So that's really, that's a big thing. In terms of just general website stuff, it's all about that user experience. So just like there's tools that you can use to say, test your page load time. Like if you Google page speed, tool, and you can put your URL and it will tell you how, like just making sure that it's as good a user experience as possible, getting other people to sort of try to do something on your website, do a bit of user testing can really help, because often we have blinders on what we think is good about our site. So those are some of the basics, like the really, really basics that you can at least test and have direction on. In terms of artsdata.ca, it is a standalone separate project run by a company out in Quebec. Isn't that right, Joyce? I want to say that that's where they're based. I've been working a bit with Capicoa, which is one of the national performing arts organizations, and they've been doing a lot of stuff on this, linked data, structured data stuff. So even if you go to the Linked Digital Future page, that website has a whole bunch of information on how to get into arts data, or even if you go to artsdata.ca. Basically, if you have structured data, on your website already, they want to scrape it and include it in their database. So, and you can reach out to me. Tammy Lee is the woman who runs that program.
Can you define what you mean by scraping?
I don't know how to scrape it. They go to your website and they grab all the code in it, like with a little, like the same way that the search engines do, I guess. They send out these little programs that can take all that and index all of that data and put in their database. So if you have the right, structure around your code, the artsdata.ca database can do that. They can send out a little program that will take all that data that's in that code and put it into their database. Does that make sense?
It's creating a mega arts engine information piece for
well, it's like IMDb, right? For movies, they're trying to do exactly that same thing, but for the arts and culture in Canada. Great. So that every person would have, if you're an actor, would have all the things you've been in, and who your agent is and all that stuff.
Thank you. I want to go back to language. Can you amplify on the topics of strategic use of language and external linking a bit?
Yes. As Sue knows, I started out on my creative path as an English major. So I love words. I love the power of language. And one of the great joys of my life was to discover this weird overlap of language and data that happens in keyword research, where you can go to the search engines and get at least some information about how many searches there are for various phrases. So, you put your language in and it will tell you how much those are searched, and it'll say, oh, and because you're interested in these 10 phrases, here's another 1,000 that might be related. So, and there's often surprises in there. So strategically, there are many, many, many things you can do with this language. You can use it to attract funding. If you got, you can say, hey, there's a lot of people that are interested in this particular topic, and I'm going to do this thing on this particular topic. Can I have a grant, please? To prove interest. You can use it to craft like a content strategy to make sure that you're creating things that go out strategically online as part of what you're doing, that you know that people are going to be interested in. So you're doing stuff that you already know people are interested in. Doing individual pages on a certain topic that's relevant to your organization, to your creative business. You can also use it like just by using that language. Like, so once you sort of have done this keyword research and you have this knowledge of the relevant language people are using, you do something that when you're writing anything, press releases, your website, Facebook posts, anything that you do, you sort of understand what that language ecosystem is around your work, and then you make sure that that just informs what you write. So it's not repeating Vancouver Art Gallery 100 times, and I'm going to do really well on Google. Well, you could have, 20 years ago, but not anymore. So you have to, but you can use that language and the knowledge about that language to just make sure that you're including it, and therefore basically build a bridge with that language between yourself, the audience you're trying to target, through the mechanism of search. So that's just some of the ways.
Awesome. Can you quickly define metadata, please?
Metadata is data about data. So it's meta.
That's more
so
fun.
Meta. so the structured data kind of falls into that as well, but you may have heard the expression meta tags as being part of something that you would do on your website. Really, the only meta tag that helps for presence on search engines is the description tag and your title tag. So the title tag, when you're doing a search or browsing the web, is the title tag is the language that appears in the top of your browser. It also is often the heading for your whatever that page is in Google. And then the description tag is often, if you don't have one, it'll just pull random words from your website or web page. But if you have a description tag, you can kind of control what the search engine says about your page. So you need to make sure that it's relevant. You need to make sure that it's human friendly. And in terms of an SEO perspective, those are, some of the most important tags. But it's basically data about data.
And I'm just going to say this idea of human friendly. One of the early experiences Annelise and I had when we were working on a project was somebody was using a word that nobody spelt correctly. And so it was not a human friendly word. No. And so we're like, okay, what are the synonyms of this word? So we can find the people who are interested in this topic, but aren't using the hard to spell version of it.
Which the spelling is less important these days now, because Google has bought all these AI things, so it's able to extrapolate. But the harder it has to work, the harder it is going to be for you to show up in search engine results. So I think, the closer you can get to the language of your audience, the better.
Another question here, and we've got lots coming in. So what is the relationship between being findable on websites with social media accounts? That was,
can you repeat that question again? So, I'm not sure I understand it.
Kitty, you may need to
jump in.
Need to clarify this. But what is the relationship between findable on websites with social media accounts? Is there one? I guess maybe the question is what's the relationship between toggling between social media and websites?
Right. Well, the nice thing about your website is you more or less are in control of it. So you can control, you can control all the stuff that you put on there and what's visible. With social media, obviously, they can also be used as search engines. And like, not all search engines are created equal. Facebook is terrible. iTunes is terrible in terms of a search engine. It's always very difficult to find what I want in those platforms. But also, like every single piece of your online sort of footprint, the way that it relates to each other, like you want to make sure that everything's linked. Because remember, search engines, the most basic, they're little programs that they send out. They index content and they follow links. So you need to make sure that all your social media is linked to your website and vice versa. Like you need to make sure that it's very easy for these little programs to find all the things that you're doing online, so that it understands that this is all part of who you are. So you rarely will see, a Facebook page show up in search results, but Twitter and because Google and Facebook hate each other. But Twitter, like your Twitter profiles will often show up in search results. So, again, making sure that you're using the right language for your Twitter bio and thinking about what you're tweeting can help. So, that language piece is really important, and just make sure that everything is connected. Does that answer your question, Kitty?
I know Kitty's got construction, so Kitty's not
Okay.
talking.
Okay.
But Kitty, yes, thank you. Thank you. Awesome.
Okay.
Okay, moving along here, rocking this. Okay, our good friend Wendy's here, championing Story Hive, and just saying the Story Hive local production folks. What advice do you give people going into production that will be heading into production soon? And I would say, I know that that's for film, but even people for theater, choir, anything. What's the sort of in the early development phases? What advice do you give people?
Right. Well, the question I always get is like, when do I start worrying about this stuff? And I always say today, because there's always stuff that you can do. And in terms of in development, where you're in the early stages of an idea, but it's going forward, I think doing some of this kind of research can help so that you are maybe creating supplemental content or other assets that you can use as part of an overall sort of promotional and audience development strategy down the road. The sooner that you can have a plan to do that, and a well-informed plan. I think, one of the things this year that's happened is that there's so many options for individuals in terms of where they're spending their time and attention. And we all have more of it that we're spending online because that's just where we are, because we can't go outside, especially when it's minus 33. But if you can be strategic, I think that is the real differentiator. I think especially in the creative sector and the culture sector, we're not necessarily thinking strategically about the kinds of things that we're putting up online. So the more you can start that process and use, this information that you can get out of tools like the search engines to be able to have to create extras that are strategic and that people are going to get excited about and, beat a path to your door, the better.
Awesome. We have a little bit of a brouhaha happening here about artsdata.ca. It's kind of exciting.
Okay.
And Leah, thank you. Leah's actually responding to some questions in the chat as well. So Leah's adding some great content here.
Excellent.
So there's a couple questions here. Is there an art service organization equivalent for artsdata.ca? And Leah has responded, artscan.ca is building a directory. You sign up for a free account and then use the directory and put your own artist stuff in there. So I just want to call that out. Annelise, is there any comment on that, or just should we move along?
No, great. I think, there can't be too many databases, right? Like in the culture sector, the only two sort of ones that have been in there since the beginning in terms of creating sort of an open database knowledge graph have been music and movies. Everything else, the more we can get in there, the better.
Great. Thanks. Okay. Next one. Haha, this is a fun one. Uh-oh. How, in capital letters, do you find these keywords? Can you be more specific?
Yes. Through the ad platforms. When people want to sell you advertising, they often will give you all kinds of information away for free. So whether it's Facebook's ad platform, or in this case, it would be the search engine's ad platform. So if you create an account on Google Ads or Bing Ads, I think it's now Microsoft Ads, keep on changing their names and branding all the time. There's a tool under in the menu under planning, which is their keyword planner. So you basically, that's what you do. You go and you put in sort of do some brainstorming, put your language in there. I was just doing this morning with the Fredericton Playhouse out on the East Coast. So we put in Fredericton Theater, we put in Fredericton Events. We did like a whole sort of bucket of, you can do 10 phrases at a time. And then Google says, if you have a live ad account, you get the most granular data, but even comparatively, even the ranges will give you some sense of the different levels of interest. So you'll get data on the phrases you put in, but you'll also get like another 1,000 suggestions potentially from Google as, oh, you're interested in this, here's a whole bunch. And so that's where you start. It's not, for me, it's sort of this back and forth. You go and go, oh, why is there so much interest in this? This is unexpected. And then you do some searching and you figure out why that is, and maybe get some more language, and you go back and you put that in, and it's just sort of a virtuous cycle. But hopefully at the end of it, you maybe have a list of, say, 25 phrases or even 10 phrases where they have decent enough interest, like there's a decent enough amount of search traffic that you can sort of start to build that and leverage that knowledge.
If this is starting to freak you out, I want to let you know that Annelise has a series of videos on her website that you can purchase that walk you through how to do this and give you little worksheets so you can actually visually see it. But just so you know, and also Annelise has trained a bunch of people on this through her education programs. So they could probably be somebody you could hire to help you as well. Just saying. Terry, I'm hoping that helps you on your question of where we find these keyword research stats. It's in the ad platforms. M is asking, so can you explain how you'd use language differently? And her example she's requesting is for an art gallery.
Okay. So if I was an owner of an art gallery and I knew what my shows were and who my artists were for the upcoming year, let's say, I might want to put the names of all of those artists into Google to figure out who has the most interest, who are the people the most interested in. So maybe I'm not going to do a single, like a page on every single artist, but maybe I find like there's 3 of them that that I maybe no surprise. Maybe I knew that these people were really popular, or maybe it's a surprise. And then you say, oh, so I'm going to invest the time and effort to make 3 pages, one for each of these artists, to really highlight them on my website, so that because I know there's all this interest because I'm getting this information from the keyword research. And then I've got assets that I can share out through my social media channels, and I can leverage them in all kinds of different ways and be findable by a whole bunch of different variety of search engines. I could also just make sure that I am using, when I'm speaking about the art gallery, I think every business has, it's sort of insider jargon, and they don't necessarily always think about their organization in the way that their audience does. So this is not from arts and culture, but I'll give you this really quick example. I worked years ago with a company in Ontario that made custom cardboard packaging and boxes. And all the language on their website talked about their business as being in the paper conversion business. They were paper converters. None of their clients searched for that. Like they wouldn't even know to search for paper converters. So just by changing the language to custom cardboard packaging and boxes, all of a sudden they were getting all this like much more traffic and much more business from all across the country because they were using the language of their audience. So there may be assumptions that you're making about how people are searching for your stuff and for the art gallery, that maybe it's worthwhile doing some keyword research just to challenge those assumptions, and maybe that changes the way that you position the business or talk about the gallery.
Good stuff. Do you need a sip of water? And I'm going to read this question out, and then Mandy, we're going to go to you after this. But here's this question. Once you've identified your customer segments, your target audiences, where can you find data about where they are hanging out online? Mm-hmm. For example, how to identify if the audience segment is heavy on Facebook, LinkedIn, blah, blah. Is this instinct, knowledge of the customer segment from experience of your network, or is there data to inform?
Yes, there is data to inform. And guess what? It's keyword research. So you definitely can use the language of your audience to find them online. So I always want to look for 3 things. I want to look for influencers, conversations, and communities that are relevant to a particular audience. So if I find that I'm wanting to, like, if I can find the language that sort of helps me to find that audience, then I can take that keyword research and maybe combine it with reviewer or blogger or podcaster, and start to put it in there. And then I also would do that on Google. And then I would go to each of the big platforms. I would go to Reddit. I would go to Facebook. I would go to Twitter. I would go to Instagram. I would go to TikTok and do searches to see if you can find out, where they are. I mean, Facebook inevitably, because it's so huge, you're going to find groups, usually about any topic you can think about on the Facebook platform. But the same goes true. Like I did this one, was working on a film about that had a character that was a female wrestler. And so I went, and even if you can find a website that is major in the space, even if it isn't, it's sort of aligned but not really competition. So in this case, the WWE website, I put it in a tool called SimilarWeb and found that actually that website, got a little bit of free information about it. That Facebook wasn't the biggest platform, that it was Reddit. There were 1 million subreddits on female wrestlers. So, like just really going through all of these different places to figure out where that conversation is happening and follow the audience. But you need to sort of leverage the search engine of each of those big platforms. And sometimes, just even like going to a website like Pew Internet or Stats Canada, which specialize in statistical research, you can get information about where those communities are online.
Great. Sort of like a sniffing adventure.
It's a mystery. I love a good
sniffing
mystery.
Cyberspace adventure to find your peeps. Okay, Mandy, do you want to go live and ask your question? You have another question, Mandy.
Sure.
Great.
Thank you so much. Are we going to be able to acquire Annelise's website for those videos and all the rest? That'd be great.
Hell yes.
I will thank you.
Joyce, I'll put it in the chat. Don't you worry about it.
Grab it.
I got that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I was going to say that here are my two websites. The first one is very.ch, which is my consulting. And if you go to storypreneursunite.com, that's my teaching website, which is where the courses are.
Okay. Radical. Thank you very much.
Radical.
My question, I guess, now is onto what you touched on with reviews. Best practices. Any hot tips on how, where?
Well,
why?
I think, yeah, I mean, reviews, it's a kind of influencer, right? Like people that want to review things. So, when you're targeting a certain influencer or a journalist or a reviewer, you basically need to spend some time, what I call lurking and learning. So spend some time. What do they get excited about? What does their audience get excited about? So you're not just doing like this, like a standard press release that goes out to everyone. You're basically you're going to sort of steal Google's modus operandi, and you're going to do a personalized pitch to that reviewer. And then you want to make sure on your website that you have one place that you can send them, or it could be a Google Drive, that has everything they possibly could need to write that review or to highlight you in some way, right? So, you have your bios, you have some great pictures, you have, basically have an online press room or media room.
Right.
Dorothy has a good question. Does information on websites ever get so stale that the website is no longer attracts viewers?
Yes. I mean, there's such a thing as what we call evergreen content, which just never goes out of fashion. It's relevant all the time, but there's stuff that definitely, like you sort of need to be adding some fresh stuff to your online footprint on an ongoing basis, just to let Google know that you're viable, still doing interesting things, because obviously, it wants to include the most current, the most relevant information as possible. So, I mean, a lot of, say, galleries or venues that have, new events all the time, it becomes kind of easy to have that because there's always new stuff out there. But I think, things definitely can get stale.
Great, thank you. Marlene, I'm going to put two keyword things here together. So with the keywords, as long as they appear in your content, they will get picked up, ? You don't have to do any specific tagging, ? And then there's another great question. Is there a free keyword planner?
Well, you can use both Google and Bing, Microsoft's keyword planner for free. You don't have to be paying for a live campaign. On Google, you get more specific data out of it if you have a live ad campaign. With Microsoft, though, completely free. It, of course, is a tiny fraction of the search market. I think only about 5 to 10% of people are searching with Microsoft versus the lion's share that really goes to Google. So you can use both of those things for free. And like I said, even if you're using a tool like Word Tracker and there's a million others, if you Google keyword research tool, you'll come up with a bunch of others. But mostly what they're doing is using the the data from Google and Bing. And what's the second part of the question? Free keyword tool, and then
it was the keywords, they appear in your content, they get picked up. You don't have to do any specific tagging once it's in your content.
Right. Yes. I mean, Google is always going to reward the most human-friendly experience possible. So you have to kind of have that language visible in a way. You get more points for that. It used to be there used to be a keyword meta tag that you could use and put keywords in behind the scenes, but people so abused it. It got, people stuffed every keyword they could think of in it that it doesn't do anything for you. In fact, if you use it, probably will get flagged as potentially being a spammer. So just better not to use it. Like I said, the title tag, which is like the title of each page, and the meta description tag are two tags that you can use to sort of behind the scenes to get a little bit more of that Google juice that Sue mentioned. And in terms of where the language appears on the page, like it used to be people would tie themselves up into knots in terms of, well, this phrase has to appear 3.5% of the time, and I have to have 500 plus words on the page. People get all really obsessed with that math. You don't really have to do that anymore. But just think about your page like you would those essays in high school. Like the first sentence of the first paragraph is given more emphasis, more sort of points than further down the page. And things that are like, you should be using heading tags and those kinds of things that allow you to make the page more scannable. So again, just be thoughtful about the language that you're including in those pages, because they do, all things being equal, like there's many, many other factors obviously at play, but all things being equal, thinking strategically about how you're using that language can help. And things like alt tags, which are alternative text for images, which are good for the visually impaired. Basically, any of those best practices for accessibility, if you follow those, they tend to be search engine friendly. So hopefully that helps.
Next question. Is being active on Pinterest much help in getting good SEO?
It depends who you're targeting. Because if you're going after rural women, yes. Rockabilly fans, yes. Big communities. big communities on those platforms. So yeah, I think every piece of what you do online is a part of being discoverable. And it just, like I said, it just depends where your audience is. For me, it's always about where your audience is. And sometimes it's going to be a Pinterest, Facebook strategy. Sometimes it's going to be a Reddit, Twitter strategy. It just depends. What are the preferred platforms of who you're targeting?
Hot damn, we have 4 minutes. There's one question left.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep.
Does the file name of your images on websites make a difference to SEO? The file name of your images?
Ish. Like again, all things being equal, two identical pages that maybe, your URLs and your image file names that can have a slight benefit, but I wouldn't tie myself up in knots about it too much.
Awesome. Oh, damn. Somebody just snuck in another question. Does it make a difference if you have one page or many? That's actually really
Oh, many. Yeah, there are many websites that are just one page. It's the worst thing for search engine discoverability because there's no way that that one page that's about everything can possibly be a good query response to every query. So the more concentrated and focused you can have a page be, the better. So more pages better.
awesome. Well, folks, it is 3 minutes to 1. I want to say that was a workout. We didn't know if this was going to work. This totally worked. And I want to say thank you to everybody for coming. It's terrible to offer something and have no one come and feel irrelevant. So totally appreciate your time. I hope you got something out of it. I am going to acknowledge that Canada Council is the funder for these initiatives. And I'm also putting in the chat the link to all the other AMAs. We have 5 more that we're hoping will be useful to you or someone you know. And yeah, and just you have Annelise's website. You see where you can buy or opt in to buy her videos that break some of these how-to-dos down a little bit more. And let's go out and do great work in the culture sector. I think Canada needs us to do so at this point where there's so many things going on. Last word, Annelise?
Go be found.
Go be found. Joyce, something else?
Those are pretty great last words. So I feel like I don't want to add any more last words after that. But yes, definitely sign up for the rest of the sessions. They're all on different topics and they are all on Wednesdays except next week, which is on Tuesday. So hopefully we'll see you all next week.
Enjoy. Have a great week. Stay healthy.
Thanks,
That's
everyone.
that's my
Wear a
final
mask.
word. Stay healthy, wear a mask. Let's do this. Okay. Take care, everyone. Thanks
Bye,
for coming.
everyone. Thanks
Bye-bye.
to Carmen and Liz as well for the
Yes.
interpretation.
I see you.